So, I mean, you just saw a story that I would try as much as I can in this half an hour to elaborate a bit together. Yes, yes. I mean, I will slowly begin shouting. This is this is who I am. So in that sense, I would really love to bring you back with me 2 years ago when I was thrown actually for the first time in Buden, and people would tell me, why did you go to Buden? And I say, I didn't go to Buden. I was sent to Buden in many ways. And actually, in that sense, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Public Art Agency for not only for bringing me to Buden, I have to say, but also for sort of pushing me beyond my own limits. I was thinking that it would have been an impossibility for me coming from a place like Palestine, sent to the north of Sweden, to even be able to do something, right? And it was quite a challenge. And at the beginning, I have to say that I had a lot of doubts, and maybe I was even terrified. No, is that who I am, even, no, to pretend to come to such place where I don't know nothing. You know, the first day that I arrived here, and I saw people very happy about the first day of snow. I thought, my God, are they really happy about the first day of snow if they have 6 months of snow? And then they would explain to me that the snow is also light, and I thought, oh my God, my point of departure is not even knowing that people might be extremely happy about the first day of snow. So how can I do anything here, right? And this was what I brought with me from Palestine, and arriving here. And in that sense, the first day, even to make it harder for me, they would bring me to this military base where we were yesterday, right? And you know, and throughout my practice, I was part of a group called Decolonizing Architecture, Art and Residency, and we worked for quite a while with military camps, thinking how they can be transformed, and with settlements. And then we very much get into refugee camps, and we began to do a lot of work with refugees. And while I was there, I thought maybe they interpreted very badly my work within military camps. I mean, what can I do here? They bring me to a place where it's all about military bunkers, military undergrounds, and in that sense, I get out and I say, can you please take me to see refugees, right? So I thought maybe this is not my best part of it. And actually, I have also to say that I was desperate for this commission because we already decided as a family for the work of my husband to move here. So in that sense, I had to take it. You know, my husband was just, no way, I mean, that you can even say I cannot do it. And I was just like, Alessandro, but the context is impossible, no? We cannot go beyond the context. The first day I went out from the military camp, I thought, no way. The day after, I will even be taken to the Yellow House. And in that sense, complete depression. Everybody was telling me that they will be leaving Buden. And at that evening, I was with Joanna and Martin, and we went to eat to the Japanese restaurant here in somewhere nearby. And I told them, guys, I think it will be really difficult for me to be able to do something here. I mean, how you bring me to do a project that is socially engaged with people that don't want to stay in the city. So what can I do? So it was quite a hard task. And this all happened, and I come back to the Yellow House out of course, again, desperation. And I was asking, do you know anybody that wants to stay in Buden? And, you know, you saw the film, and they pointed Yasmin and Brahim, and I was thinking, oh, amazing. I mean, they even say 2 names and and they give me phone numbers. So I was thinking, if Yasmin and Brahim manage to understand why they should stay in Buden, then maybe I can, you know, maybe they can solve me the issue. Maybe I can do a project here somewhere. And when we get inside, and of course we call them, and they immediately say, yeah, please come home. No, this is the way we do it. Normally for the coffee, you don't need to have an advance time or a calendar. They just say, jump in, and we get inside their house. And again, we were with Marty and Joanna, that are now great friends. But at that time, I mean, I didn't know them. And for me, they represent the Swedish government, right? So I was taken by the Public Art Agency, and I was together with the government to do a project in Buden. And to make it even more official, the first day I arrived, already press was there to speak with me. I mean, what is this artist coming from Palestine, brought by Stockholm, with the Public Art Agency, bit of confusion around, and I thought, okay, now here I am represented by the Swedish government. And getting inside the house of Yasmin and Brahim, the first thing that happened is that we get inside these corridors, and we were asking, I mean, should we take away our shoes? And they were, yeah, of course. In Syria also, we take away our shoes, so we get inside the house. And we were speaking Arabic, and I was thinking, oh my God, we are alienating the Swedish government. I should translate for them what is happening here. And I was just like trying to translate, trying to tell them how we host normally and what we do. And then, you know, they were offering us coffee, and they were offering us dates, and things were happening. And in that sense, maybe I came also with sort of something in mind that I was looking for, working in refugee camps for more than 12 years. What I saw there is a very strong political agency, and people even living for 70 years, waiting to come back home, still holding very strongly to their political subjectivity, right? And I came to Boden, and I guess I was very much looking for this, because this was the only way where we were able to work in refugee camps, right? And in that sense, looking for this political subjectivity, entering into the house of Yasmin and Brahim, and seeing them shining, I mean, exactly the opposite of what I saw in the Yellow House. I mean, if I saw depression in the Yellow House, I saw people shining out of them, being able to host, and in that sense, even more being able to host the Swedish government. And in that tiny little room, I thought that if this living room is really able to shift the whole dynamic of who is the guest and who is the host, then maybe we should think about the public space through this perspective. In that sense, I guess that and it spoke to me very strongly, because a lot of time people say, you are working with a project with refugees, and I say, no, it has nothing to do with, I think that Yasmin and Brahim helped me to understand more, how can I live in Sweden, right? And in that sense, you know, to bring you a bit back, when my husband got the job in Stockholm, I was extremely in crisis and not happy of us coming here. And I was very much thinking, we have two daughters, 12 and 9 years old, and it's really a perfect time for them to be in a place like Sweden. And as a mother, I wanted very strongly to come, but as a person, I thought, I don't want to be a foreigner again. And I lived in Italy for 13 years, and I did my PhD in Italian. I spoke Italian better than my mother-in-law, yet I never managed to become Italian, right? And I thought, why should I go into this journey again? Why should I be taught how should I behave? I mean, I'm 45 years old, and I'm tired of being taught how I should behave, how I should be a good guest, how I should walk in the public, how I should be looking like. And in that sense, I thought it's better to live under occupation with dignity, rather than to come here and to be taught constantly how should I behave. And actually for me it was so clear the moment I was at the house of Yasmin and Brahim why I didn't want to come to Sweden. And when I saw them hosting, I thought, maybe if I will be also hosting, I might be able to live in Sweden, right? So in that sense, the project began slowly to become bigger, and I thought, exactly because I didn't want this project to be only about refugees, because I felt it's extremely about myself, it's extremely about Sweden, and I will explain later on why I think that it's also extremely about Sweden. And in that sense, I decided that I would like to begin to host. And I can tell you, I mean, it has been only 1 year and 2 months I am in Stockholm, and our house became a place where we are constantly hosting, where we are having a lot of dinners, and we simply ask people to bring their friends. And for me, the moment that strangers are in my house is the moment where I feel more and more integrated in the place. And maybe in 1 year and 2 months in Sweden, I have more friends and more people that I know, rather than in 13 years of life in Italy. And all this because I decided to exercise my right to host. And in that sense, maybe not only to exercise my right to host, but almost to be able to initiate my own common public space. And here I would like to bring you to the notion of public space, and how this project showed me how to look at least at public spaces, right? And in that sense, again, coming back to the challenge of belonging to a public space, highly codified, like the one that we are having here in Sweden. No? And it felt to me, I have a PhD and I taught a lot of times in universities, but I can tell you that it's not an easy thing to be able to belong to the public space here. And I really tried hard, and I felt it is, maybe I read myself, maybe I learned how to understand my difficulties, and yet I felt it's very hard to belong to the public here and to understand also the codes and the norms and in which way to belong to. So imagine if somebody like me coming with a husband in the university, commissioned by the public art agency, and yet having all these difficulties. How can we pretend that people arriving for the first time in a culture that they don't know can belong to the public? The issue is that what really happens normally is because of this difficulty of belonging to the public, people refuge to their living rooms, and in that sense, living rooms behind the walls, I have to say, and they would create their Iranian living room, their Palestinian living room, their Iraqi living room. And if we permit this to happen, then what will be the consequences of this is more discrimination, more separation between all these living rooms. And in that sense, I would like to invite you to think about the Swedish public living room, and maybe the biggest one, the most abstract one, yet it is one of various living rooms, right? If we want to understand our society in a complete different manner. And this project is posing one very important question. Is it the only way we can understand public space as a sort of, as such an abstraction, almost God, no? Because you arrive here and you say, this is the public, this is how you should behave, and you should not question this, you should simply behave. No, I feel there is something quite religious in the way we deal with public spaces here, and in that sense, is it possible to break a bit this religion and understanding that there might be a possibility of multiplicity of living rooms? Some of them are small, some of them are larger, some of them are more open, some of them need a bit other openness. And in that sense, I would like again to invite you to think about the role of the threshold in the public space. And I will try to explain myself. When I was working in refugee camps, and we arrived to a point that we decided to do a square in one of the refugee camps, people decided that they cannot self-organize the place without having 4 walls and at least 3 doors where people can get in and out. And they say the threshold is very important. If you don't have a municipality, if you don't have a huge, big, abstract public that would take care of this square, we need to have a threshold, and we need people to take the responsibility of getting inside this plaza or this square. And in that sense, it makes me understand sometimes the lack of any threshold makes people feel less and less belonging. And sometimes, we all the time feel that walls are only bad things, but sometimes if they would be the ones that can help people create belonging and create possibility and create a sort of common places, then why not? And in that sense, the main difference I saw of Yasmin and Brahim, that they did not accept only to invite Arabs to their house, but they opened it to the rest of people in Boden. And at a certain point, Brahim told me that if the cashier in the Coop will smile for him, he would say, why don't you join me for a cup of tea in my house? And he was explaining to me, outside I am a number. In my house, I become suddenly a human. In my living room, I become suddenly a human because I am hosting. I'm the one. You have to look at me, right? You have to speak with me. You have to understand who I am. And in that sense, I think that we really need to take this opportunity and think, how can we understand public today? Is it possible that we really need everybody to act the same, to do the same, to be the same? Or we are into a much more interesting society where there are a lot of thresholds that are open to each other, that can speak to each other, and that can actually interact, yet nobody is imposing his own culture on the other. And of course there would be a culture of majority, nobody would say no, but in that sense, how this culture of majority would be generous enough to accept that people comes with other cultures, and you know, of course negotiation is a very important issue in all this, yet if we don't permit these living rooms to become visible, then we will be going only towards discrimination. And Stockholm is a very important example into this. And in which way we can have policies for people not only to hide themselves behind walls, but to be able to get out and to be able to sort of be part of that society and contribute, right? Because in that sense, you know, what happened is that the moment that people are not given the right to be hosts, they don't have also the right to contribute, right? They accept to be guests, they accept orders, and they don't participate. And this is a great loss for Sweden, not only for refugees that would lose their agencies, but what will be happening also, how can we renegotiate a new public and a new public that can contain many other cultures is a very important question for this living room. Yet, I mean, this is what I explained is very much the conceptual framework behind, but I want to take the time that is left to me to tell you how the project then moved, because it's, so in this moment we have 5 active living rooms that very much interact with each other. One is in the house of Yasmin and Brahim, and some of you will be going to dinner there. Another in the Yellow House, and this was an amazing collaboration with Bodenbo and Havra Magazinet in Boden, where we were granted this ground floor apartment that was turned into a living room that is very much used by a lot of refugees, of course, hosting also a lot of Swedes inside, and the whole idea how to create a sort of a public living room that permits refugees themselves to host and not only to go all the time as guests to places. And many of you, I guess, will be part of the dinner tonight in the Yellow House. But in that sense also, in my private living room, I'm still claiming I am part of this network, but I was also invited by ArcDes to have to do an installation there, and the whole idea was how can I claim my private space within the public, because in that sense the only way for me to belong to the public is to have my threshold and my 4 walls and 3 doors. So in that sense, and I turned the place into this place where a lot of discussions around integration, around hospitality is taking place, and simultaneously I have both public living room and private living room, similar to what happens here with Yasmin and Brahim. And then a 5th living room was a very interesting actually case where I was working for the last 10 years with a few women in Fawar refugee camp in the square I mentioned to you. And they were very much working for 10 years on the right of the women to be in the public, right? And when I told her about the project we are doing in Boden and Sweden, and she says, how come we never thought about it? Because in the Arab world, you still have public living rooms, but they are mainly run by men, because in that sense, the host is a position of power, right? And men are the ones that are all the time running these public living rooms, and if foreigners are coming to a village, is this 3 men that claim themselves within this village or that other village as hosts are the ones that are sort of hosting. And Ayat, at a certain point, she told me, but if I would only claim that I have a living room in Fawar refugee camp, I don't need really for 10 years I was speaking about democracy, the right of the women, this and that. She says, I claim myself as a host. They would gut it immediately. They would not accuse me of bringing other cultures that are not belonging here. And she opened up her Al-Madhafah, and it's a whole sort of new discussion within the camp. What does it mean for a woman to be a host, right? So in each time it works in a complete different manner. It breaks the whole idea of who has the right to host, yet it is something that is happening in many places. And for example, we were invited in the NYU to do an exhibition there, a retrospective exhibition for 2 weeks. And we went there and we say, okay, we come here, we are your guests, but we pretend that we are hosting also. So we got an apartment in the campus of the NYU, and we began to invite in the buildings of where the teachers are living, where students never had the chance to come. And we open up this living room and we say, you are all welcome. And we were inviting teachers with their students. This was the first time for teachers and students to be at dinners together. And the security was getting completely mad because we changed the whole shift and everything and bringing students all the time to place where they should not be. But matter of fact, in 10 days, I was walking in the campus of the NYU, saying hello to everybody. I became almost local more than local. And I thought, how strong could it be just to think, you know, I am in a place and I don't accept only to be a guest. I want to participate in this place. Maybe I'm going extreme in that sense because the project needs to go extreme, but it's only to think in that sense how strong it can be to think I am demanding my right to host. And I want to finish actually with coming back to Sweden and where are we in the right of host for Swedes, right? And in that sense, what happened throughout the whole modernity building of the place? I mean, and in that sense, is it when it happens that we sort of understood that the ones that has the right to host is the government? And in a sense, are we still as people and as simple people still demanding or thinking about our right to host? And what did modernity do in all this? And, you know, I was in lectures in many universities in Sweden, and many students would come the day after of the workshop and say, you know, I was thinking what was happening in my living room, and when was the last time I activated my living room? And at a certain point, they say that, you know, we even turned the living room itself, you know, from being this space of representation, because matter of fact, if you would think architecturally about what the living room is, the living room is that space in the private that works as a space of self-representation. And this is why sometimes, you know, if you would remember some living room from your grandparents, and I mean, still my parents also have the same, that there is a room that is all the time ready, and it's the least used in the house, yet it's the most curated, it's the most taken care of, because there was this feeling is that, you know, I need to be ready to host anytime this is happening. And, you know, in a place like the Middle East, because we used to be stateless in many ways. I mean, we never have a strong state. We never was lucky enough, actually, to have a strong state. We never give up with our right to host, because this was the only way we were able to still be having a functional society, right? And in that sense, the question is, can we give up with this idea of the right to host in the name of the building of a place where there is a relation between an individual and the state directly, and we don't need any more each other? Or how can we understand, and I would like to finish with this, how can we understand today the right to be a host in a place like Sweden? And it feels to me sometimes that it would have been impossible for me to do this project if not in Sweden. And there is some reason behind why it was impossible for me to do it if not in Sweden. Thank you very much.